Good to have everyone over here. My name is Tavan Kadepurkar. I'm the co-founder and CEO here at Provus. So Provus is an AI-powered coding platform built specifically for the services industry. We replace manual Excel-based tasks with workflows for intelligent coding so that teams can price better, improve margins, and bring more predictability and compliance to their sales process. We connect sales and delivery with data so that the decisions are not guessworks, but they are informed decisions. I'm extremely pleased to be joined by John Gentry, whom I will introduce shortly, and to talk about his journey through ThoughtWorks in terms of their adoption of AI in their overall sales process. Jesse, if you can move to the next slide, please. Just some housekeeping activities before we begin. So folks, thank you for joining us. Use the chat in the Q&A to submit your questions and share insights. We would love to have it interactive, love to answer questions that you may have. We will absolutely follow up on unanswered questions, which we may not be able to get time or not be able to answer here. We will make sure that we will answer those questions. A recording of this webinar will be shared within 24 hours. So again, if some of you are not able to attend the full webinar or miss parts of it, you will absolutely get to hear from us. So fantastic. So let me get started. Extremely pleased to have John joining me today. John was the former global sales transformation leader at ThoughtWorks. He has led large-scale transformation programs and built high-powered sales teams across multiple organizations. And he specializes in designing structured, repeatable growth engines for complex services business, right? Now, that's what his background is on. At ThoughtWorks, he led the modernization of the global sales, redesigning the overall sales process, decision-making, and operating model across regions. So, John, great to have you. And feel free to add more color to if I have missed out some points on your background.
No, you've probably added more color than everybody on the call wants to hear already. So I'll just let it go at that and say thank you for it.
So thank you, John. So that was a good one. What we're going to talk today is what you did at ThoughtWorks in terms of modernizing the overall sales platform, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to talk about how did it all start? I think because
Sure.
that would be a good background for I think to get us started on this whole program.
Yeah, I can give you kind of the bones of it, and maybe we can even use the discussion as a way to structure later answers.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I joined 3 years ago with ThoughtWorks, with this intention to help them build a new global scalable model. And you'd say, well, gee, what did they have before? I mean, what's the problem? And ThoughtWorks had the really good fortune of growing for 30 years, growing a lot over 30 years, based on reputation and word of mouth.
Absolutely.
And they had the advantage of being a clearly identifiable leader in thought leadership and technology and applications building. So they were some of our people were signers of the Agile Manifesto, if any of you know about that. And that expertise and that technical capability that let us get involved in some of the hardest and most intractable projects kind of earned us a reputation. So the phone kept ringing,
Yeah.
And it really started ringing post-COVID. But then when the, budgets started to dry up, all of the sort of the really cool work that a lot of clients wanted to do, there just wasn't so much of it anymore. Our phone stopped ringing some too. And the whole industry kind of went into a place where, hey, all of these projects that were happening are slowing down. And so we were confronted, maybe for not really the first time, but probably maybe one of the most meaningful times, exposed with not having a growth capability that could really reach out and go find work. What we had was a really strong team that could take in demand, qualify it, vet the good ones versus the ones that don't really need us, get to closure, get the teams going, get the project started and finished. Oh, that was working really well, really capable people. But when we had to turn it loose on the marketplace at scale, that was kind of our issue. We had a lot of people hunting down new clients, even though
Right.
they didn't come in. But
Right.
we didn't have it institutionally. And to make it even more complicated, we had grown by growing into 19 different countries, and every country had its own go-to-market capability. And there was some similarity across those markets. It's not like ThoughtWorks was, had 19 different companies all across the world. There was a lot of sharing going on, but there really wasn't an effort to kind of come together as a global company taking on large scale problems and initiatives like a global company. So
Good.
our clients didn't really see us like that. So the company wanting to return to growth, and I talked to them right about the time they were thinking about it to say, hey, look, what you really need to do, take advantage of your own scale. But you need to operate as a big unit that can drive a global strategy that you will come across to your clients as much more capable and deep than you
Right.
do when you come at them in a country-based model. And the work will change, things will get better, things will start growing. Plus, having new kinds of skills to tell people who ThoughtWorks is and what
Yeah.
we do. You can't do that by saying, here's who we are and here's what we do. How much of it do you want to buy? Which I think everybody knows. You have to start getting used to the idea of really understanding your client's business issues, which means you need to put in time and effort to make sure that you understand industries, those particular clients, and you need to start slow with a client. You need to pick up where they are to find
Correct.
out what their problems and challenges are. And then ultimately, hopefully some of them turn into consulting engagements, where you're doing work. And, that's
Right.
kind of how the actual consulting projects industry, has grown.
Exactly.
There are other kinds of consultancies that have grown differently. There are firms out there that, will put four or five people in an account, and those four or five people will help find more work. And
Correct.
pretty soon you have 100 people there. It's fantastic. That's not
Correct.
really ThoughtWorks model. ThoughtWorks model is more focused on trying to drive an improvement in the client, trying to drive an outcome. We take on a little risk too in making that outcome occur. And so that means trust has to be built, et cetera, et cetera. So in order to take on an initiative like that, I showed up and said, look, there's a whole bunch of things you got to do. And here's a list of them, let's get to work.
Correct.
But it was also a culture change. There
Exactly.
was a different way to sell in old ThoughtWorks versus new, in that there are a lot of very strong people that brought in powerful selling skills, and brought in from the outside as experienced people.
Hmm.
And you either found your way into the ThoughtWorks network uh, to
Right.
to find how to get work sold, or you bounced off of it for whatever reason, and you moved on to your next company. And I had a different view that our selling force should be integrated with the rest of the company, and they should be considered as much an asset to the business as the people who deliver the work,
Hmm.
meaning we should invest in them. They should become
Got it.
part of the equation of value, not just the front door with the contract in hand. And I'm
Correct.
oversimplifying, that's not what they were before. But we needed to build a capability where we're actually trying to create a client experience that lasts many years. And it starts with probably marketing in the new world, moves into selling, moves into delivery leadership, and so on. So we needed to think about the whole organization to say, okay, if we have 10 parts we have to build, how many do we have?
Hmm.
And the ones that we don't have, how are we going to get them made? Are we going to train into them? Are we going to hire into them? Are we going to invest in technology to get those capabilities? We had to step through that in kind of an orderly way. So we started that. So to summarize kind of that whole mission, we needed to implement a culture of growth, transparency, collaboration, and accountability. Many of those things were new in our selling model.
Right. So,
And so that was sort of the underpinning of whatever we did. So
ooh,
even though the plan changed several times along the way, those things were always true.
very, very interesting. So again, I think, and it delves into my next question really is like, when you started looking at the overall landscape, right? So like there are now too many variables that you have to start dealing with, right? It's process, it's tools, it's people, it's basically roles of people, right? Who has the authority, who does not have an authority, right? What is the decision
Right.
making criteria, right? And sometimes it then starts becoming too much to manage. So how did you focus on that, right? Because at one end you can say, oh, everything has to change, but you cannot now start changing everything at the same time, because that really does not, because you
That's
still have
right.
to keep running at the same, in services companies classically have the whole quarterly targets which we have to meet and all those kind of things, right? So you really cannot stop. It's like, as the classical saying says that, the airline is already in air, so you have to keep changing that engine while the aircraft is in air, right? And it's not like,
That's right.
you can
Yeah,
put
we
it.
had that problem too. And it was a continuous challenge as we did the initial as we started and did the whole initiative. But I think things that I have learned from the past, where one of the first orders of business is work to establish some credibility in what you're up to. So I started pretty slow. I probably spent probably the first 3 months that I was with the company. I talked to somewhere between 200 and 300 different leaders in the business,
Wow.
and it wasn't just sales. I was talking to finance, legal, our people team, our delivery teams, consultants, sellers, different kinds of sellers, sales support, anybody that had an opinion about how things are working inside ThoughtWorks. And what that gave me an opportunity to do was, one, hear what people thought the problems really were and what they
Correct.
thought solutions might be. And the cool part about that is you learn about things that people have already tried and didn't work, but
Correct.
not because they were bad ideas, but because they weren't that brought up at the right time.
Correct.
There's like a good amount of thinking just laying around in the business already.
Yes.
So I learned a lot about that. And then from that, I was able to create sort of the overarching, this is our North Star. This is the kind of company we want to be from a growth point of view. And what are all the characteristics that are going to be true by the time we're done? And then take that message out. Again, it's partly about credibility, but a lot of it is about enlisting people in the vision to say, do you guys all agree this is a good idea? If we did something like this, would you be okay with it? And largely people were, some weren't, but we had to start that way. But I think the big surprise that came to me that I learned during a lot of the interviews I had was that I had hoped to be able to come in and look at our data and start to diagnose, so where are our problems? Are we
Correct.
not finding enough opportunity? Are we not converting it at every step in the pipeline? Do we have a closure problem? Do we have
Correct.
delivery
Correct.
issues? What's the problem? And what I learned is that while individual businesses kept a pipeline, and even though we had a CRM system, it wasn't used to
Oh,
give any kind of a global view. And not only that, we all use different words for the same things.
huh.
So you might say the thing is qualified, but that doesn't mean the same thing to me as it does to you. And there wasn't a place to go diagnose and look at the data. And I realized that's because we don't really have a cadence in place that is a global cadence.
Got
So the first thing we needed to do was kind of what you would call a boring thing, but it was foundational, which is let's get everybody knowing what all the sales stages are. What does it mean to be qualified? Everybody has to use CRM. Everybody's data has to be right a certain number of times a month, once a week. This is how we forecast. This is how we talk about opportunities. We meet once a week inside the markets with a combined team, and then once a month at the regional and global level. We implemented all of these cadences so there were places to talk about the data. So at first, what we talked about was the fact that our data was so terrible. But you keep talking about it enough, and pretty soon the organization starts getting good data in. And we
Yeah.
started to develop data we could count on, and we started realizing what a lot of our issues were. And a lot of our issues were around execution, sales execution, is what we discovered, that it was very, very hard to get a deal approved. And
No.
oftentimes you try to get a deal approved and you'd find out a half an hour before you hit the send button to the client that there's somebody in the company that doesn't like it and they pulled the brakes on the deal at the last moment, and there were lots of issues like that. So what we thought we needed to do first was try to take some noise out of the system. Let's get some really aching problems solved because we just asked people to put all their stuff in CRM. So they're kind of hating us a little bit to begin with, right?
Correct.
And then what I wanted to do was make it easier for them to do their work. So we did implement some changes to how deals are looked at. And one of the tenets of the transformation is implementing deal coaching. And it's the idea that the company and your colleagues are here to help you win, as opposed to a culture where the management and your colleagues are expecting you to win. And if you don't, they yell at you, right? That we want to get everybody in on it, so that you should, if you're interested in the outcome of a deal and you're depending on it, therefore you should probably be involved in the deal. And you should get involved early and help the team shape it and help them knock down issues internally that are preventing the team from moving quickly. So we implemented a formalized deal coaching structure that made it so that a person could come in from the outside that doesn't know anything about us, and they have a deal of a certain shape. They're going to get coaches that are pre-assigned, and they become their colleagues, their coaches throughout the entire deal to help them get the deal done. And by the way, deal approval happens gracefully as a result of that. And so that was one of the changes that we have made. We discovered that we didn't really know where we were with pricing, for example. We, like a lot of technology consulting firms, have built very sophisticated spreadsheets to price deals, which is great. But what we didn't have was the ability to say, okay, so what are the pricing trends? Well, we could see what the margin trends were based upon how we were delivering, but we couldn't tell much about our pricing. So we needed to get our quoting and pricing online, which is how Stalwan and his team and our team got hooked together. Their product, CPQ, was just the right answer for us because it was very services industry focused. It had a lot of the issues that we were encountering solved already. Plus and some not. Some of the stuff was either ThoughtWorks specific or we had to convince ThoughtWorks to change, which we were successful many times, but not every time. But we had to get that pricing data online inside the enterprise system. And Provus CPQ was a huge, huge part of that. And so those were other changes. But we implemented a sales methodology. But what we did is that we let the aching part of the business need drive what we do next, knowing that we know what the North Star is. So I don't have to start at the foundation and then build the next thing and then build the next thing. And in 3 years, finally, we're done. We're saying, no, I'll do that sooner, but I know what it has to look like at the end because I figured it out. I'll just do it sooner. And so bit by bit, we built the whole transformation that way. And some of these things, we just took them right out of the business, things that had existed. So hey, I love that approach. The sales stages existed. It's just we all had different definitions. Well, let's just clean that up. Just use your sales stages. I don't need to put John Gentry sales stages in here. A sales stage is a sales stage, right? So there was a lot of that kind of work as well. So getting credibility established to the degree we could first, getting some wins underneath, then starting to take on some hard stuff, and then giving some value back, after we dragged them through it. We tried to balance it back and forth so there was change, trouble, and value delivered, sort of along the way. And we've got most of the bones of it in. There's still a lot of work to do to make it sort of business as usual because we did a lot of different changes in the 3-year period. And also people changed during that time. So bringing other people up to speed, et cetera, et cetera. But that's how we approached it. We didn't approach it all at once. We sort of pieced it up, partly based on plan, partly based on just let business need drive it.
So what you, I think, talked about was very interesting for me, right? And I think like putting the fundamental data model in place, making sure that the data exists. Because, here we are in the world because you talked about post-COVID. Post-COVID world, everybody wants to talk AI. Everybody thinks AI and AI is going to solve everything. And again, AI is fantastic and AI is going to solve and is going to increase productivity. There is no question about it, right? And I think we ourselves are actually actively uh, selling AI to our customers and showing the value which is there, right? But it comes with foundational data, right? So as you were
Mhm.
going through this process, right? How did you tackle, right? This whole pull and push from within the organization, pull from customers in terms of AI and AI first and all those kind of things which we keep hearing. But then how
Right.
do you make sure that the organization is ready for it, right? So what were the steps that you took?
Yeah, that it's a great question. We had a little bit of luck go our way because of the ThoughtWorks is ThoughtWorks. So it very early on, when ThoughtWorks saw that this AI shift was real, um, our new CEO and the management team ran toward getting out in front of it. Now, granted, it doesn't make us an early adopter, and we saw it coming. But we were a very early entrant into it, and still continue to this day try to drive new thinking relative to client value. Right. So there was an enormous amount of energy, and still is, inside the company to create capability that delivers client value. Right. So in the midst of all of that, here we are driving this global sales transformation, and I don't know if you've heard the joke, but the punchline is there's got to be a pony in there somewhere, and in my mind, I believed that there was an opportunity to think about selling differently. And, one of the things that we saw is that the tools and the technologies were changing so fast, month by month, so a new
Correct.
tool would show up, a new capability would show up that claimed to just overwrite what was there before.
Correct.
So we thought, well, if we're going to follow that path, we'll be in catch up mode all the time. So we kind of made a choice that said, we know we're headed to AI, but what's the sort of the next steps after that? What might they be? Right. And so our theory of the day, the one that we used, was a lot of people are going to use AI to just do things they already do, but do them a little faster or a little better. And we said, I don't think you need a transformation team telling you how to do that. Just, grab a tool and go do it. See what you learn, right? Because what we did learn is once you start doing that, your brain changes. And all of a sudden you start thinking of problems you would never have thought of before because you never would have thought you could have solved them with a tool before. So now all of a sudden, new questions started showing up, even as we started to do that. But we did do some help in that first sort of wave of let people do what they already do, but do it faster and better with like generative AI. We installed some tools to help people find sales collateral faster.
Okay.
And it was and construct some sales collateral from existing sales collateral, and
Okay.
that worked pretty nicely. And we've had that going for a little over a year and a half now, and it really made a dent because I kind of called it the dark web. That if you wanted to find sales collateral, that's true in a lot of companies. You have
Yeah.
to know the last person that used it. Do you have that deck you used on this presentation? Can I have it because I want to use it for?
Correct.
That means there's a dark web. This is unindexed data,
Correct.
right? And even though we have a knowledge capital management system, you have to put stuff in it for it to be
Yeah.
useful. You get the problem.
Correct.
So what we discovered is that we could use a tool like that to actually go out and index all the Google Drive across the
Fantastic.
company.
Yeah.
We gave people a heads up, told them to get personal stuff away. We're not going to mess with any of that stuff. But what that did is it took all of that work that used to take hours, days, weeks,
Yeah.
and dramatically improved it. So that was something that was like, let's do something we already do, but do it better.
Yeah.
And we started experimenting with, so how do we get proposals done faster? And so there was a lot of energy with that next level. And I wasn't so behind that, honestly, because I thought, everybody's going to try to figure out how to make a proposal get done faster, but I don't think we're losing deals because our proposals aren't getting done fast
Okay.
enough. Right? That was my theory of the day. I
Okay.
said we should either get them done better, avoid the proposal process altogether by entering early with a value proposition that's non-competitive. I'd
Right.
rather use AI for that, and that gets me to the next wave. So we said, well, we just let the company kind of mess around with the first wave. We were getting ready to try to understand what will clients likely want from us next year. based upon what they're doing and what we're doing, can we use AI to understand both sides of the equation better
Correct.
than we ever could by spending 2 weeks to write an account plan? And I don't know about all the rest of the people on this call, but you probably have a love-hate relationship with account plans, that the
Correct.
idea of them is great,
Correct.
but the execution of them, they're usually dashed off too quickly.
Yeah.
They're never consulted again,
Yeah.
used as weapons against the account teams when they're not delivering against them. There's all kinds of stuff. But I do believe they become a musical score for the company if you've decided that the whole company needs to help our client teams win at those clients. So everybody knows how to play and what's important.
Correct.
But it was a lot of work to do it right. So we started deploying some agentic tools to help our teams do account research, find out what's really important to this client, and also what's important to this client relative to what we can do for them. Right? We started experimenting with, well, if I want to do work kind of X, if I want to do some mechanical orchard work, for example, to kind of, read through compiled objects
Yeah.
and then extract code from it,
Correct.
in what settings and who might be in that spot. It exposes information we just could not find. We couldn't have an army of people hunting down this
Right.
information and find it.
Right.
And so that led to much better understanding of clients and of ourselves, which
Correct.
all of a sudden the account planning process wasn't so much I just have to fill in some boxes with some guesses. You had a pretty good idea based upon what you learned, what was really happening. The other cool thing that was unexpected is that we said, well, if I want to chase this kind of work, mechanical orchard kind of opportunity with one of our partners, who should I be talking to in this account? And it would go through and it would find the list of people that apparently are making decisions in there. And we discover that there are like several people, we don't even know who they are. And so, all of a sudden we had a better map of how to get to know this client and understand their issues than we had before we started. So this whole area of planning and strategizing better is where we put a lot of our energy as opposed to the transacting faster side of it. Um, Not that we didn't want it to happen. We just let the organization do that on their own, right? We thought that the focused effort would be on creating better strategies and better outcomes for clients. And that's where we focused a lot of that energy. And we're still kind of finding our way. I mean, we still have a ways to create proposals that are light years ahead of what we were trying 18 months ago. We can right now produce a credible proposal from an RFP in a really short time frame based upon our stuff. So we can listen to the client, understand it, translate that into a solution, create sort of a solution offer and the bones of a bid and the bones of a document that we can use to present to a client. That's come a long way. Now, what does that do? It helps you do the old process faster. It doesn't help you not do the old process. So I think it's
Yeah.
worth doing.
Correct.
But my belief is that we need to be working more on finding those unique niches where only ThoughtWorks could win the day if we define the problem right with client, and
No, no, absolutely.
that's the gold right there.
And I completely agree with you. But here's the challenge, right? And again, like you said, right? You let the organization do their discovery in terms of finding new tools, but then it becomes a plethora of tools, right? That's
Mhm.
where I think organizations struggle, right? I want this tool for this tool for this. Everybody comes with their own favorite tool, right? So how do you now distill to that, right? Because I think one of our conversations I heard you guys looked at 150, 170 tools, right? Which are there, right? So sometimes it becomes too much also because I think ultimately as sales folks are coming into work on their everyday work, you don't want them to be touching 10 tools to find a problem, right? Or trying to find a solution for something, right? Because it's only going to create more problems rather than any solutions for them, right? So what's your thought process?
Right. Well, I'd like to tell you that we have that one entirely figured out. But I do know that we did implement some policies and some cautions around the use of tools in that by using a lot of these tools, you have to provide data to a public domain company tool where this information that might be confidential information is now exposed outside the
Correct.
firewall of ThoughtWorks.
Correct.
And a lot of people said, "Oh, geez, you're right about that. I better be careful." And people were pretty respectful of that boundary of being
Correct.
careful about how they put that data out there. Um, but we also knew that we needed to give the teams capabilities that let them not worry which tool gave it to them.
Okay.
So we would build sort of a chat front end, for example, that might go out to Chat GPT, it would go out to Claude, it would go out to Glean, it would go out to Perplexity, and it would piece together what it needed to piece together, all inside of agreements with those companies and confidentiality worked out. And it
Correct.
would give them their account research document, for
Okay.
example.
Got it. Got it. Got
And
it.
so we now granted that's us trying to do something for them. That's us hearing what they need and implementing something. But the cool part about it is that if something was missing, it took us a day to say, "Oh, we can add that. Sure, no problem. We'll change the prompt." The reaction time, unlike an application when you build it, you say,
Yeah.
boy, we missed that requirement. 6 weeks later, you're implementing something. With this, it was right now, that we could flex with the
Got it.
company when the needs pretty fast. So that was one way we did it. So policies was one thing. Two, trying to go after what we believed that the teams needed most and build something that sort of took that challenge away to not away, but made it not something they had to worry about. Uh,
Got
but there were still plenty of inquisitive people that just wanted to try. I mean, we're an
it.
organization with, you know, 9,500 engineers.
Yeah.
I'm
It's not easy.
exaggerating on the number. It's up there
Correct.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they want to get on Claude and see what it does. And they
Correct.
did, and they do, right?
Correct.
And so we have made tools available to teams from a coding workbench point of view. And but all of this is done sort of hand in glove with our go-to-market moves. We've got a capability we're calling AI Works, what lets you basically go from requirements to code through a
Yeah.
series of agentic AI capabilities, some of which everybody knows and can replicate, some of which are built on libraries specific to ThoughtWorks.
Of
So it's
course.
our sort of secret sauce. But nonetheless, it's generating application software in a tiny fraction of the time that it used to. We're using the same capability to rebuild a lot of our own infrastructure. We're in the process right now, for example, of building up a project accounting capability that
Hmm.
we basically went from requirements to the first version of it in 5 weeks.
Wow.
5 weeks, and this isn't like MVP bare bones
No,
kind of
got it. Got
stuff.
it.
This is a robust application, and
Correct.
I was blown away with it. So there are many applications we have underway to do this, which we're using the stuff we're taking to clients to say, look, we can do it for you too. But we're learning a lot from that. So a lot of the people that are curious about what do these tools do, can get involved with what we're doing and building them for ourselves. Because I love the idea of standing up in front of a client and saying, look, we did this to ourselves. It worked here, it didn't work here so
Exactly.
well. This is what we've learned. That's a consulting company really bringing value.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So in that context, right? And I think, see, in this, and I get it for the whole development process. I think where AI, like, as you rightly said, right? Everything from requirements to getting the application of the code out. But really, what we see as we keep talking to various companies, sales leaders are struggling with like AI, right? And I think they are getting pushed by what AIification of processes internally they have to do, because they are pushed to selling AI. So that's like, sometimes it is distraction. Sometimes it is like, do you move to a classical sales model or do you do something different, right? So what's your advice to them, right? Given your rich background, right? Because you not just at ThoughtWorks, you have you've seen this transition and transformation across various companies, right? So what
Hmm.
would be your advice in terms of, what should they be worried about? What should they not be worried about? And what
Oh,
action should they
sure.
take?
I mean, that's a fair question, and I'll do my best. I would say no matter what, we talked about a little earlier, you have to respect the problem of your data, of your own data. That if you're a leader in your own sales and growth organization, I'm including marketing and
Right, right,
sales
right.
support, all of that. um, you have to be able to count on your data. And so if you don't have a systemic way of making sure your data is refreshed once a week in your pipeline, and you believe that people are keeping their data current once a week, you don't have it current every day, but once a week, it ought to be right. Then you will begin to question your data. Then you will begin to question the results that AI gives you from it because it'll hallucinate for all the wrong reasons. So it's not just go clean up your data by running code against it and getting rid of duplicates and getting rid of crap in your system. It's, are you keeping transaction data current as part of the core way that you operate your business? So
Yeah,
I would say that's a big deal. So we even implemented dashboards around data hygiene to show, hey, you know what, this part of the company has only a 75% score in data hygiene and it needs to be above 90. So get to work. You've got to, and here are the records that are causing the problem. Go fix them. Um, and yeah, it is a grind. There's no doubt about it. It is a grind, but it has to be done because without it, people start guessing. They start
correct.
guessing about, well, gee, who do I need to hire? Well, I don't know. I'm just guessing about what the demand is. And so you start getting the error multiplies as you move back into the system around making investment choices and hiring decisions and acquisition choices. That pipeline data is the lifeblood of the company. It's got to be right. And so that's one. And so after that, I think following the need of the sellers is a good place to start. To
Okay,
look in your own organization and say, what in your organization, what are they struggling in most? Like what is the thing that keeps them from giving the client what they want back from us and during the sales process in the time frame that's better than our competitors? And for some it might be, I can't get a proposal out the door in less than 3 weeks. The
correct.
client wants it in two. I just don't have the horsepower. I just don't have the people. There's too many deals going on. I can't get prioritized to the top. So you can imagine all the hallway arguments that happen over who gets priority against the proposal creation team. Well, there's an opportunity for AI just to help do what you already do, but do it better. But as
Correct.
soon as you fix it, the next the next egg coming down the snake shows up. You're just kicking the can down the road. You're just going to say, okay, the bottleneck, I solved the bottleneck only to find another bottleneck. So having a track that chases making life better, so speed to market is better for your sales team in general, is worth doing. But right parallel to it should be an activity around, are we chasing the right things? Are we looking at the right clients? Do we have the right offer set? And that kind of analytical power, by understanding your pipeline, by understanding what's selling for you versus what's selling for others, and what's really unique about you and where you can differentiate, that can help you set go to market strategies that are better. And in most companies I've been in, the marketing, the market planning, the account planning, the financial planning are all disconnected or at best loosely connected activities. And they need to be to some degree. You can't
Yeah,
do
yeah.
that stuff
Sometimes
over
you
one.
cannot over connect also. You have to keep them
Yeah,
separate.
that's
You have
right.
to make them.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think there's a strategic connection that can be made using AI that wasn't possible before.
Correct.
And I think using that to wire them together makes your whole company operate a little cleaner,
Correct.
but I think that the big advantage is for selling, especially in a high value selling environment, which means that you've really got to get to know your clients. Using the tools around AI to understand what's really going on so that you can really bring insights to a client because we've talked about this before when we're implementing CPQ. It's our objective to drive a consultative selling approach, as part of our new sales culture. Well, you say, well, gee, everybody sells consultatively,
Correct,
Well,
correct.
no, they really don't, because there's varying levels of it. But what we mean by it is that I don't want anybody selling anything to the clients. If a client's feeling like they're being sold something, you've already broken something, right?
Yeah,
It should just be, you've got a problem. I'd like to hear about it. I'd like to understand it. And you're leading the client down a path of discovery to show that you as a company have something of value that could contribute to it. And then the client says, I want to buy it. And now you start maybe classic selling to kind of work through some of those things. But to get the client to a point where they ask you for help is something that should feel very consultative, which means you have to know something about your offers and you need to know something about that client, which is a different selling motion for a lot of clients. You probably will need to had some kind of delivery expertise in some way to say, I've
yeah,
done this before as a
yeah,
seller. And I think in our space, in consulting in general, technology consulting in general, having some level of exposure to really doing the work always helps. If you don't have it, you sort of break apart the selling process in kind of unhealthy ways. So, that's a pretty important aspect to making it work too, is
yeah.
is
And
making
especially
sure
in the
that's in
AI world
place.
now, all these walls in between are all collapsing because
Yeah.
everybody has lot of knowledge at their fingertips. Again, clients are much more informed. So I think people do have to embrace the change, right? That would
Yeah,
be
yeah,
my.
they do. The funny thing about it is I think we're headed for a period that it's gonna level the playing field so hard that it's gonna be like social media.
Yeah,
That every person is going to have an in-depth, well-grounded opinion
yeah,
that's totally opposite to the person who sat next to them and used a different tool, and everybody's going to argue their point.
yeah,
So, but we've got to go through that period to figure out how to make order out of that mess. There's
correct.
no way to the other side but through it. And so,
Yeah,
how can we
everybody
get
has to
through it
almost have
faster?
like everybody has to have some delivery capabilities, some marketing capabilities, some sales capabilities. You cannot say that I am a silo. I will only focus
You,
on.
you, you, you can't and
Yeah,
shouldn't. So AI should be unifying,
okay,
right? It should lead to greater understanding,
yeah,
and if you're focused on building greater understanding of your teams, of your own company, of the client, of using AI to practice your pitch, it's a
yeah,
basic thing.
yeah,
But a lot of times, people practicing talking to a client and giving a presentation is a great idea, but nobody wants to give it to their boss because the boss won't like it and they'll yell at them. But if you could train your little AI to do that with you, you could get a lot better. I've tried it. I've done it myself. It really works.
yeah,
So, but I think that idea of it's definitely worth some investments on making the salesperson's life go better as long as it's filtered through better speed to market, a better proposal, not a faster proposal, but a better proposal, not just, I think this is a tool that can cut email uh, maintenance down by half.
correct.
It's got to be relative to the customer. How does that help? Right. I think that's a great path. And then using AI more strategically to understand, I think, is the other big investment area. I think that's worth companies thinking about.
So for again, my last question for you for a CRO, for a head of RevOps, or a VP of sales, right? What would be your advice be, right? As so many things are changing around them, what should they
Mm-hmm.
focus on in 2026, right? Should their focus be process? Should their focus be tools? Should their process be all of the above, right? What do you think makes sense?
Sadly, it's kind of all of the above. I would say that developing personal expertise in the application of AI to you or your business has to be part of all those other things you need to do.
Okay.
Because if you're not really sort of fully personally understanding the relevance of the AI capabilities, they're going to keep changing.
Yeah.
And you're going to sort of be two steps behind all the time unless you're in on it. That you're trying things as they come out and you're trying to relate them to the work you do. And that, I think, at a level, a CRO needs to have that hands-on feel for how does this stuff really work and how does it really go. But that helps that person, that one CRO, right? The next layer of question is, what should I be doing to help me think about what I should be doing for the team?
Okay.
And for sure, it all depends on the strategy of your own company. I mean, ours is we needed to scale. We needed to be able to get a scaled organization up, which
Yeah.
means we had to implement a lot of commonality, same tools, same process, same methodologies, so that instead of acting like 19 companies, we'd act like one. That was important to us. You
Yeah.
may already be at a place where you're
Exactly.
globally scaled,
Exactly.
so you'd have
Yeah.
a different set of priorities.
Correct.
But I think that it's hard to answer generically, other than to say this is a time of huge change.
Yeah.
I think sort of like when the internet came, right? You know, that
Maybe bigger. I would say maybe bigger
maybe
than that.
bigger.
Maybe
Yeah.
big, right? And so this is
Yeah, it's like,
something.
think of what we did back when the internet rolled out. We'd say, oh, gee, I used to have brochures and now I'm going to put them online. That's what it was. It was like
Yeah.
brochureware on a screen. And then you could click things and you'd look things up. Then e-commerce started showing up, but we had to experiment our way through it. And I think that's a lot of what has to happen with AI is experiment your way through it
No,
constantly. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Interesting, brave new world for all of us right
It
about now.
is. It's very exciting. It's great to be alive right now, I
Absolutely.
think. It's
Absolutely.
so cool to be living through this.
Absolutely. So great. So I think let's open up for questions. If anybody has some questions, I think there were some questions which had come in earlier. Uh, Maybe if there are no questions, I can take one or two of those other questions which had come up. Let me
Sure.
check them. So you talked about account prioritization and those kind of things, right? So who owns using the AI for account prioritization, right? There is this whole tussle between IT owning it, or sales owning it, or marketing owning it.
Marketing owning it.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I can't speak for every kind of business that's out there,
correct,
but I know that there is a schism, at least between sales and marketing, that probably in the age of data and AI needs to be stitched up and healed. I think the joint is really between after strategy and before marketing operations and before opportunity qualification and into the
correct,
lead generation side. There's a joint there
correct.
that if you can heal the joint to say that sales will work with marketing and the executive team to establish go-to-market strategy. Therefore, it means something to our branding, both at a market and employee and all of those levels of our own branding. Then that will turn into campaigns. It will turn into messaging, and the company has to be ready to receive them.
Yeah.
And so hooking them up is pretty important. And a lot of that work can be done. A lot of the heavy lifting, focusing on the right spots, can be dramatically assisted with AI. So, yeah, I do believe IT has a huge part of it. As a matter of fact, at ThoughtWorks, our IT organization, we call it GITS, they have been instrumental. I mean, a critical factor in making sure that we've done all of this stuff reasonably well. And you could argue maybe we haven't, but they have been a real partner in it to sort of make what would have been a mystery to me less a mystery. But I think that nobody really ultimately owns what are we chasing them in the market except for this really the CEO.
Yep.
Other people can advise, marketing can advise, sales can advise, our AI can advise, but we need to sort of unify on believing it and then seeing it through. So, but I think IT is a big part, but they're a helping organization as opposed to the driving organization.
No, fantastic. So, any parting thoughts? But again, I think, Don, thank you so much. This was fantastic. You sharing your perspective, and how you have been instrumental in terms of helping ThoughtWorks transform. Again, sometimes. it takes a lot of leadership, a lot of guts to basically, I think move these kind of titanic ships basically into the right direction. But
Yeah.
again, I think I know it would have been a Herculean effort for doing that. And thank you so much for our partnership. What we have been able to do in a smaller way in this transformation journey that you have been.
Thank you. And thank you and your team for your partnership with us. This has been a great conversation. I've enjoyed it. I feel like we could go another
Yeah,
hour digging in
we can
deep
go
on this
another
stuff,
hour. So,
but
yeah.
it's a fun topic. And even though I joke around with my friends, I say, the way I sound is that I'm sometimes wrong, but I'm never in doubt. And so when I say something, I sound like I'm so sure about it. But I know on the other side of that is we probably made 20 mistakes along the way
Yeah.
to get there.
Yeah.
But it's been a great learning experience. It's a fascinating learning experience, but it's also the change and the aggravation you introduce to your teams is real, and it's hard for the teams out in the field to pick this stuff up, even no matter how cool it is.
Yeah.
And having an appreciation for that's really important. So it is a hard job, even though the end result is cool. It's a hard job.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. Thank you
Fantastic.
so
Well,
much.
thank you
Thank
for
you.
inviting me, and thank you for hosting.
And appreciate all the people who attended. Thank you so much, folks. Take care. Bye.
All right, bye bye.